On the way to meet Alexander's business partner, he instructed me coldly.
Mr. Smith likes beautiful women and cigars. Later, be perceptive and sit next to him, light his cigar or something. Even if he touches you, you can't show any displeasure, understand?
I held my stomach and nodded lightly. Today happened to be the first day of my period, and I always felt weak and in pain on the first day. I looked at Alexander, trying to negotiate.
I'm not feeling well. Can I skip today?
Hearing this, he glanced at me with dissatisfaction.
Emily, don't be so pretentious.
I lowered my eyes and said nothing more. When we arrived at the meeting place, I saw that Mr. Smith already had a glamorous young model in his arms, lighting his cigar and pouring his drink. Alexander then affectionately put his arm around my shoulder, and I quietly sat beside him like a decorative vase. I thought he finally showed some compassion for me. But the next second, my illusion was shattered.
I've heard that Alexander has a particularly cherished woman. Seeing her today, she is indeed refreshingly beautiful. Ah, we ordinary folks don't have such good fortune.
Hearing this, Alexander laughed and pushed me towards him.
Just a woman, you can switch any time.
My face turned pale instantly, and I felt a chill all over. Mr. Smith laughed heartily, patted the young model's bottom, and signaled her to go to Alexander's side.
Then I won't be polite.
The young model was overjoyed and shyly leaned against Alexander, feeding him wine. After all, Alexander was handsome and wealthy. And Mr. Smith was a balding man with a beer belly. I stiffly let Mr. Smith pull me into his arms. His large hand slid over my leg and finally rested on my waist. But he didn't do anything too excessive, so I endured it without moving. The two finally got down to business and started discussing their deal. I numbly endured the long hour. When they finally announced the successful cooperation and shook hands, I returned to Alexander's side. After Mr. Smith left, Alexander's smile disappeared instantly. He looked at me with eyes full of mockery.
Emily, you look so cheap right now.
I stiffened and silently lowered my eyes. Alexander was about to leave when he suddenly received a phone call. I didn't know what was said on the other end, but after hanging up, he took me to a private room upstairs. When he opened the door, everyone inside looked over. They were all old acquaintances I used to know.
Hey, isn't this the former darling of City A, Emily? Ever since your family went bankrupt, we haven't seen you. You and Alexander.
Several young masters exchanged glances and then looked at the girl sitting in the middle. Her name was Sophia, Alexander's childhood friend. She was also my former archenemy.
Darling? Does she deserve that title now? Just Alexander's kept plaything.
I pressed my lips together and silently sat beside Alexander. Before my family went bankrupt, I was a proud and aloof young lady, pursued by countless admirers, including Alexander. I ignored everyone, and they called me the high and mighty goddess, the darling of City A. But now, after Sophia's words, their gazes towards me changed instantly.
Hey, if you need money, just say so. How much did Alexander give you? I'll double it, just spend a day with me. How about that?
You used to be so high and mighty. I chased you for 3 months and you wouldn't even have a meal with me. Now you've fallen so low to become a man's plaything.
The harsh words came one after another.
I bit my lip hard, the verbal humiliation even more unbearable than Mr. Smith's touch earlier.
I almost couldn't hold back and wanted to stand up and leave. But Alexander grabbed my wrist, his dark eyes fixed on me.
Not happy?
He suddenly picked up a bottle of wine and smashed it against the wall. The glass shattered everywhere, making a loud noise.
Anyone else who talks nonsense, don't blame me for being rude.
Everyone was stunned, including me. I could never figure out Alexander's thoughts. One moment he was humiliating me, the next he was fiercely protecting me. Just like now, I almost thought he had real feelings for me.
Alexander, you can't really be falling for her, can you? Don't forget, our families are supposed to be united in marriage. You can play with her before the wedding, I don't mind, but if you really have feelings for her, I won't let it go.
A canary is easily frightened. Before I'm done playing, I can't let anyone scare her too much.
Sophia reluctantly believed this explanation and sat down angrily.
You better think that way.
I forced a bitter smile.
I had learned this long ago, but I still pretended not to understand. This was Alexander's specialty. Give a slap, then a sweet treat. He treated me as a plaything, wanting to toy with me.
I looked up and met his gaze. I saw my reflection in his dark eyes.
Beautiful, but stiff like a wooden doll. Completely different from the lively and spirited me of the past.
I desperately told myself, "It's okay, I don't mind."
Because I couldn't bear the disgust in his eyes. What I couldn't bear even more was the absence of me in his eyes. The gathering ended without a conclusion, and I inevitably drank a couple of glasses of wine. When we were leaving, Sophia followed, saying it was too late to go back alone. Alexander agreed. I couldn't care less, my abdomen felt like it was on fire, and I walked unsteadily. As soon as we got home, I didn't even take a shower and immediately threw myself into bed. Just as I was about to fall asleep, someone suddenly pushed the door open. A glass of cold water was thrown in my face, and I woke up with a start. The blanket was dripping wet.
Emily, get up and make dinner.
"You're crazy!"
Sophia's eyes burned with anger, and she came up to drag me.
Emily, how dare you insult me? This is Alexander's house. If he tells you to cook, you have to get up and cook.
I struggled, and Alexander's voice came from the doorway.
What's the commotion?
Sophia instantly changed her expression, letting go of me and pitifully clinging to Alexander's arm.
Alexander, you drank, your stomach must be uncomfortable. I wanted to make something for you to eat, but I don't know how. So I even brought her some water and kindly asked her to teach me, but she threw a tantrum, spilled the water, and called me crazy.
Is that so?
I didn't explain because Alexander knew I couldn't cook. He could have exposed Sophia's lie directly, but he didn't.
Cooking is something for the servants to do. How could I let you do it yourself? Just order Emily to do it.
Isn't that inappropriate?
What's inappropriate? Emily is willing to do anything for me, right?
I was silent for a long time, then hoarsely murmured an agreement, slowly getting out of bed. The movement pulled at my abdomen, and I couldn't help but gasp in pain. As I dragged my heavy steps past him, Alexander suddenly grabbed my wrist.
What's wrong with you?
I shook my head, saying it was nothing.
Then I broke free from his hand and walked straight past. I had already said I wasn't feeling well, but he didn't believe me anyway. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. Alexander was sitting by my bed. Seeing me open my eyes, his tone was harsh.
Emily, you finally woke up. You didn't even know you had a fever. If we had come any later, you might have ended up with serious consequences.
Oh.
I turned my face away from him. Alexander sighed and suddenly became gentle.
Are you mad? Blame me for not noticing sooner.
He was always so unpredictable. When he was in a good mood, he would agree to anything I said. When he was in a bad mood, he would humiliate me in front of others. I was used to it, but Sophia, who had just entered the room, became anxious and said sarcastically,
Who knows if she's just trying to gain sympathy again?
Alexander's expression instantly turned cold. I knew she was referring to the accident Alexander had a year ago. He was seeking thrills, racing with a group of friends on a mountain track. As a result, he had an accident and lost his sight. And I was the one who appeared by his side after his surgery. Having lost his vision, he was irritable and gloomy every day, often throwing things in anger. I deliberately stood still, letting a flying teacup hit my head. At that time, my forehead was covered in blood, and the commotion of nurses running back and forth scared him. Everyone thought I was deeply in love with him, staying by his side all the time, never leaving. Alexander believed it too. I naturally became his girlfriend. But a spoiled rich kid's bad habits don't change. Like a toy he longed for, once he got it, the novelty wore off quickly. When the novelty faded, so did his affection, and I lost my value. With Sophia's constant instigation, Alexander gradually believed I was taking advantage of his vulnerability to solve my family's problems. So his attitude towards me completely changed. Sophia's remark about gaining sympathy directly hit his sore spot. Alexander stood up, leaving behind a take care. Then he followed Sophia out of the hospital room.
Bye, Emily.
I tugged at my lips, lowered my eyes, feeling a mix of envy and resentment. After my fever subsided, I was discharged from the hospital quickly. When I returned home, my room was a mess.
What happened here?
Before I could ask, Sophia walked in with a puppy, proudly announcing,
Isn't it cute? This is a gift I gave to Alexander. I think your room is perfect for the puppy's playroom, so you'll need to move out.
I pressed my lips together and silently started packing my things. It's just a room, I can live anywhere. Sophia wandered around the room, enthusiastically planning the layout of the playroom.
This toy car seems to be Little White's favorite. How about giving it as a welcome gift?
I turned around and saw her picking up the racing model from the table. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately rushed to grab it back.
This is mine.
It seems this is important to you. Now I want it even more.
She put down the dog and unexpectedly lunged at me to snatch it. In the struggle, the racing model fell to the ground and shattered.
No.
I felt my heart break along with it, and a surge of anger rose within me. I was furious and slapped her with all my strength. Sophia staggered back several steps, accidentally stepping on the dog's tail. The puppy let out a piercing yelp and bit her leg. She screamed in pain, falling to the ground, her face pale. I stood there, picking up the broken pieces of the model, tears streaming down my face. This was the shared glory between Daniel and me, and now it was gone too. In a daze, I saw a spirited young man walking towards me on the racetrack. I blinked, and as the tears fell, my vision cleared again. The person coming was Alexander. Not the Daniel I longed for. Of course, Daniel had been gone for a long time.
Alexander, I was bitten by a dog, and Emily even slapped me. Take me to the hospital quickly.
Alexander paused, then picked Sophia up in his arms, giving Emily a cold look.
Emily, what tantrum are you throwing now? I'll deal with you when I get back.
With that, he carried Sophia out. Sophia continued to sob and complain.
My parents never laid a finger on me since I was a child, and Emily dared to hit me. I won't let her get away with this, boo-hoo.
Emily acted as if she couldn't hear, completely immersed in her own world. A profound sadness engulfed her, and she held the model in her hands, feeling numb. She didn't know how much time had passed until Alexander called her, snapping her out of her daze.
Sophia needs 5 shots. She only just fell asleep after causing a scene at the hospital. This is all you're doing.
She was bitten by her own dog. What does that have to do with me?
Alexander was taken aback, his expression darkening.
I thought you would reflect on your actions at home. Clearly, I was wrong.
He pointed at the broken model.
If she wants it, she can have it. Everything in this house was bought by me. Now, come with me to the hospital and apologize to Sophia.
I'm not going. She took my things. If anyone should apologize, it should be her.
Over the years, Emily had become more restrained, but now, she refused to back down. Alexander was stunned, seemingly not expecting her refusal. He frowned in displeasure, his tone icy.
Emily, what right do you have to say no now? Don't forget, I helped you settle $1 billion debt in exchange for your freedom. Be sensible and apologize to Sophia, or I can easily ruin you again.
Emily stared at him, feeling a part of her heart suddenly go empty. After a long while, she lowered her head in a panic, suppressing the bitterness, and whispered,
I'll go.
At the hospital, as soon as Sophia saw Emily, she started shouting.
Emily, how dare you come here?
Emily remained silent as Alexander stepped out from behind her, his voice devoid of any emotion.
Emily is here to apologize to you.
Sophia raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms.
I've always lost you since we were kids. This is the first time you've bowed your head to me. For old time's sake, kneel and kowtow to me, and I might forgive you.
Hearing this, Emily clenched her fists, holding back her retort. Alexander spoke up at the right moment.
Kneeling and kowtowing is unnecessary. Just apologize properly.
He gave Emily a push from behind, his voice stern.
Emily, apologize now.
Emily's clenched fists relaxed, and she suddenly felt a sense of calm. Sophia smirked, pressing on.
If she doesn't kneel and kowtow, then let the dog bite her too.
Alexander, tired, pinched the bridge of his nose.
Sophia.
Fine, let the dog bite me. Just compensate me $5 million for the broken model.
Sophia exclaimed in shock.
Emily, are you out of your mind?
Alexander frowned deeply, looking at Emily.
What do you mean?
Nothing much. Fair is fair, isn't it?
Sophia seized the opportunity to accuse Emily.
Alexander, I told you she's only after your money.
Emily looked straight at Sophia.
So, do you agree?
Sophia immediately refused.
In your dreams. $5 million for a broken model? That's daylight robbery.
In that case, we're even.
With that, Emily turned to leave. Alexander grabbed her wrist, his dark eyes swirling with emotions.
Emily, where are you going?
Emily stared into his eyes, the shadow of Daniel seemed to fade away. After a long while, she softly spoke.
It's none of your business.
Sophia cried out at this moment.
Alexander, my leg hurts so much. Call the doctor, boo-hoo.
Alexander slowly let go of Emily's hand and went to Sophia's side. Emily let out a cold laugh and walked out of the hospital room. I went alone to the racetrack on the hill outside the city. Before I could enter, the security guard stopped me at the gate. Just as I was about to give up, I ran into a familiar face. It was Michael, a racer from the same era as Daniel.
Excited, Emily, long time no see. Let's add each other on WeChat. I have a race today, you can stay and watch.
Friendly, I nodded slightly and took a seat in the stands.
As the referee's gun fired, the cars turned into mere shadows in an instant. The cheers and shouts around me continuously assaulted my eardrums. In a daze, I seemed to see Daniel racing on the track again. Tears fell from my eyes without warning. After the race, Michael ran towards me, elated. Seeing me crying, his expression turned serious.
Serious, Emily, Daniel wanted you to move on before he passed. When will you be able to let go?
Sad, I can't move on.
I hugged my knees and cried silently. Michael sighed and sat down beside me.
Sad, if only I had stopped him from racing that day.
Shocked, but even if I had, he would have insisted on going. After all, Sophia suddenly placed a huge bet on him. With that money, you could have paid off your debts. Shocked, what did you just say?
Michael was stunned and then hit his leg hard.
Serious, Emily, didn't you know? That race was added last minute. It was all Sophia's fault. She egged Daniel on to race against those rich kids. If Daniel won, he could take the $1 billion bet. Angry, she even made him sign a waiver and write a letter, afraid of being held responsible if something happened. I was furious, but Daniel agreed without hesitation. If only I had been more forceful, maybe I could have persuaded him.
Determined, I have to go, Michael. See you next time.
With that, I ran out. So that's how it was. My heart spasmed, and I could barely breathe. Clutching my chest, my vision went black. My phone suddenly buzzed with a message from Michael.
Cheerful, Emily, let's visit the orphanage next time to see little Sophia. Thanks to Daniel's cornea donation, she can see again. She's been wanting to meet you.
So, Alexander's cornea wasn't Daniel's? I lost all strength and collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. What have I been doing this past year? My throat couldn't make a sound, and I felt like I was dying. I returned to Alexander's house in a daze and started packing to leave. Just then, Alexander came back, his face dark.
Angry, Emily, where have you been? Do you know I've been looking for you all day?
Serious, Alexander, let's break up. I wish you and Sophia a lifetime of happiness.
He was stunned.
Shocked, what did you say? Just because I forced you to apologize to Sophia?
Serious, of course, it's because I don't love you. I love Daniel, the racer who had an accident with you. Serious, Alexander, you know him.
Alexander looked at me in shock, his fists gradually clenching. I pulled my lips into a slight smile and walked past him. Of course, Alexander knew Daniel. Because the race was his idea, and Sophia's provocation was part of his plan. I rented an apartment. Lying on the bed, I fell into a long period of emptiness. Sophia had disliked me since we were children. As kids, she competed with me over pretty dresses and expensive dolls. As we grew up, she competed with me over grades and who had more admirers. Because I always outshone her, she never liked me. Until my family went bankrupt, my father took a drastic step, my mother fled abroad, and the enormous debt fell solely on my shoulders. Sophia began to lead the charge in bullying me. She forbade others from helping me and mocked me every time we met. The only person who stood up for me was Daniel.
Emily, are you okay? You don't have to face this alone.
Daniel, I don't want you to get involved. It's my mess to clean up.
Daniel was my classmate, and he seemed to come from a struggling family, always rushing between various part-time jobs. When our eyes occasionally met in the classroom, he never avoided my gaze. Instead, his ears would turn red, and he would stare at me with intense eyes. I knew Daniel had a crush on me. So I didn't want to drag him into my mess and always coldly refused his help. Sophia looked down on him, calling him a pauper.
Emily, spend a night with me, and I'll help you pay off $1 million in debt.
How about that?
Sophia sat on a desk, covering her mouth and laughing. Yeah, Emily, why don't you sell yourself? With your reputation as the white moonlight of City A, I'm sure many rich boys would fight to have you. Ha ha ha.
Sophia, you!
I trembled with anger, and just then, Daniel rushed in and draped his jacket over me. He then grabbed a pen from the desk and swiftly approached Sophia.
If you dare bully Emily again, I'll make you pay.
I won't dare anymore. Please let me go.
Daniel paused, then slowly dropped the pen. He walked over to me and held my wrist.
Emily, let's get out of here. Cheer for me at the racetrack. I'll give you all the prize money if I win.
Why are you helping me?
Because I like you.
I was stunned, and tears fell unexpectedly. For the first time in a long while, I cried in front of someone. Daniel panicked, trying to comfort me.
Emily, do your best.
After that, I attended every race to cheer him on. In one race, he gave up the chance to compete abroad and chose the most inconspicuous racing model as a souvenir. Holding the model, Daniel ran through the crowd towards me from the racetrack.
Emily, I want to share my glory with you.
Amidst everyone's cheers, I blushed and accepted it. I cherished it ever since. But now, he's gone, and even the model is broken. I cried until I almost couldn't breathe, huddled in a corner in a daze. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Dragging my heavy body, I went to open the door. Standing there was Alexander.
What do you want, Alexander?
Don't close it, Emily. You look so pale, are you sick?
Unable to match his strength, I let go. Alexander reached out to touch my forehead, his face full of concern. I dodged without hesitation, leaving his hand in the air.
Emily, I forced you to apologize for your own good. Otherwise, Sophia wouldn't let it go. Can we not break up?
Why?
Alexander was taken aback, unusually at a loss.
I should have known, such cold eyes don't deserve his cornea.
I let go, mocking.
If I hadn't thought Daniel's cornea was donated to you, would I have ever considered you? Alexander, you overestimate yourself.
Alexander's expression changed, and he suddenly pushed me against the door, veins bulging on his forehead.
Daniel, Daniel, always Daniel. Just a poor boy, is he worth your thoughts?
He loosened his grip, his tone turning despondent.
Emily, you're such a good actress. Even I fell for it, thinking you really loved me. I worked so hard to take you from him, and now you want to leave? Dream on.
Anger surged in my chest, and I struggled fiercely. Alexander took a deep breath and let go of me harshly.
Anyway, I don't agree to break up. Take some time to rest, and I'll wait for you to think it through.
With that, he didn't wait for my response and left in a hurry. As he said, he didn't bother me for a month. I found an ordinary job and lived a numb life. One evening after work, dragging my tired body out of the office building, I saw Alexander waiting under the street lamp.
Emily.
I walked past him directly, but Alexander grabbed my wrist, his eyes red.
Emily, I'll make it up to you, replace the model, just come back to me, okay?
I stopped at his words, looking at him coldly. He gave a bitter smile, his dark eyes full of hurt.
I knew you only cared about that.
Alexander forcefully took me to the racetrack, where I saw Sophia, who hadn't appeared for a long time. The once arrogant young lady now wore a cheerleader's short skirt uniform, standing at the finish line, her eyes blindfolded, trembling all over.
Alexander, are you crazy?
Just watch.
With the sound of the starting gun, Alexander's car shot forward like an arrow. As he neared the finish line, his speed became increasingly uncontrollable. He was just a meter away from crashing into the trembling Sophia.
Gasping loudly. Heart skipping a beat.
At the last moment, the car swerved sharply and crashed into the nearby barrier with a loud bang.
Damn, another accident.
Security personnel immediately rushed to the scene to begin rescue efforts, and I ran over as well. When Sophia was freed, she looked terrified, her dress soaked. She bit her lip in humiliation, her lips bleeding, and finally ran off crying. She bumped into me as she ran.
Shoving Emily hard. Emily, are you happy now?
With that, she quickly ran away. I stood there, and my first thought was that this time, luck had finally abandoned Alexander. The scene was chaotic, and when Alexander was carried out on a stretcher, his right leg was twisted and bleeding profusely.
Tears falling from her eyes without warning.
Sorry, I didn't get first place. I can't get you that model.
Thinking of Daniel who had died in an accident, was he thinking the same thing before he passed? That he couldn't win the $5 million prize to pay off my debts?
Alexander seemed to think I was crying for him. Before being taken away, he comforted me with a pained expression.
Emily, don't cry. I'll be fine.
He was taken to the best private hospital, but I didn't go with him. Michael appeared from somewhere and took me away from the scene. In the lounge. I don't know how long it took, but I finally calmed down. Michael sat nearby, leaning back on his arms, never looking at me.
Emily, do you think this is karma? I can tell that Alexander's leg is probably done for.
He sighed and turned to me, murmuring.
One leg for one life seems fair, right?
I hugged my knees and didn't answer. Michael stood up and exhaled deeply.
Emily, come with me to see Sophia. From now on, start a new life. Daniel wouldn't want to see you like this.
Okay.
I followed Michael to the orphanage. Not far away, Michael was playing with Sophia. I sat nearby, listening to the director tell their story. Sophia's eyes were injured, and her parents, who favored boys over girls, couldn't afford the medical bills, so they left her at the orphanage's door. It was Daniel who found her. Daniel was also an orphan. To earn quick money for Sophia's eye treatment, he became a race car driver. I hugged myself tightly in sorrow. The day Daniel had his accident, I didn't even get to see him one last time. When I arrived at the hospital, I only received one piece of news. Daniel had donated his corneas before he passed. At the same time, Alexander, who had injured his eyes, underwent a cornea transplant in the neighboring ward. I naturally assumed that Alexander had received Daniel's corneas. Fate had played a cruel joke on me. After leaving the orphanage, I went home. Alexander's family called me, accusing me of being heartless.
He lost a leg because of you, and you haven't even visited him. He almost crawled out of the hospital to find you.
Before they could finish, I hung up the phone expressionlessly and blocked their number. He brought this upon himself. What did it have to do with me? I chose a livable city and quickly moved there to start a new life. 3 months later. Michael told me that since losing his leg, Alexander's personality had changed drastically. He had become gloomy and irritable, frequently smashing things and losing his temper. People avoided him. Sophia, who used to follow Alexander everywhere, hadn't visited him once. Instead, she quickly married a new partner through an arranged marriage. Her new partner appeared honest and straightforward, but was secretly very promiscuous. Sophia was either busy catching him in the act or on her way to do so, constantly causing a scene and becoming a laughingstock. After hearing his story, I felt a mix of emotions. In just 3 months, it felt like years had passed. I soon put their affairs behind me and started a new round of work. When I was tired, I would poke the battered but somewhat repaired race car model on my desk with my finger. Then I would look at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window. This simple, peaceful life seemed pretty good.